Hello everyone, welcome. We are live from Inkarnate Town. Today we are creating an epic boss battle map with the fantasy battle maps. So I'm super excited about this. I'll be showing you how to put together stamps to make a big baddie, to make the environment in which you're going to be facing that big baddie, and then also how to run that. I'm not going to use any specific system. I'm just going to give you a general idea on how to run maps like this because the monster, the big boss, is going to be static, and so you'll have to find a way to work around with that static instead of using a monster token. So I'm super excited about this. I'm going to be showing you how to put all those giant baddies together and how to make an environment that you can work around with as you're avoiding their attacks, environmental challenges, and minions and stuff like that. So I'm super excited about that. If you go ahead and just direct your attention over to the chat, I provided some links. There's a Discord link. If you haven't already, join our Discord. Incredible community. Now, a couple weeks later, you're going to find that your map skills have improved immensely. So definitely go check that out. Great community there. Definitely, you're going to want to check out our stream requests. You might find some requests there that you might want, or if you want to make your own request, you can. That's a canny page. Just click that stream request link and let us know what kind of videos that you want to see, okay? And if you haven't noticed yet, you can go up into the menu, the hamburger menu here, and what's new can kind of pop up, and you're going to see some recent updates. We just released the August stream calendar as well as the map prompts for the month. So definitely go check that out. I'm on vacation for most of next month, so only one stream for next month, but I do have some clips from other streams, shorter clips for those of you who like the shorter clips. Those will be uploaded on the Wednesdays that I am gone. So we're not going to forget about you. Promise there, okay? All right, so let's jump right in. The first thing that I generally do is, you want to create a new map. I'm going to be using the portrait aspect ratio. And the reason why that is because I want to have the players start at the bottom and then move their way up to the top where the big baddie is. This creates this feeling of tension, the sense of drama. You don't know what you're about to face. So having your players start at the bottom and then move their way up allows the suspense to build up. And then when they finally get to the top, they realize there's a big boss there. And that way, it's not as soon as they immediately teleport onto that section of the map, they're immediately going to see the bad guy. For me, when it comes to bad guys, you really want to build up the tension, especially for bosses. Build up that tension, make it nice and juicy and spicy before they get to the boss. That way they're kind of preparing themselves for the fight. They have some time to figure out strategy and whatnot. So it's always nice to use this kind of aspect ratio for those big boss battles. Now what I'll do is I turn that grid on so that I can see the scale. One of those equals 5 square feet. And I've changed it to 15 instead of 40. 40 is your standard for this, but what I do is I switch it over to something different. And so what I do is I'll end up using 20 or 15 instead. 15, my bad. Let me get this up here, 15. And what this does is it's going to make it very clear the scale, and it's easy to work with, and we can line up things to the grid as we go. And what I'll do is I split up my map into 3 sections. The first section is going to be where your players arrive on the map. That's going to be right about here or so. You can line it up with the grid if you want, maybe right here. The other section is going to be where the combat takes place. That's going to be right here. Okay? And then that next section is going to be where the big baddie is. So you start right here. This is the start point. Remember, the boss is out of view, and that way it builds up tension. Here is where the combat takes place. We're going to be creating some environmental challenges because the boss is a static image, because it's not a token. We're going to have to come up with challenges for your players, because if it was a token, then the players could just walk up to it and then they would be able to move around and attack it. So you have to create environmental challenges and minions to get through, to get the challenge, to get to the boss and then start hacking away at him. That's what makes, I think, a good boss battle, is a mix between environmental challenges, minions, and then the boss itself. So that last section right here is the space for us to construct the boss and then some kind of backdrop for that boss to be in front of. So that's going to be kind of like your backdrop. So that's the overall layout that I kind of go when kind of putting it together. And one of the first things that I'll do is I'll create the environment first. Once I've created the environment that you're going to be interacting with in combat, then I'll create the big baddie, okay? So I'll go ahead and just remove these. I don't need these. You get the general idea, 3 sections. Hey, first time chatter, Shash00. Welcome, by the way. Glad that you're here. We're going to go ahead and first create the environment, right? And so what we'll do is we'll go over and click the line tool. We're going to click stamp. And you notice that there's been a change to the UI. Looks a lot nicer now, much easier right here. And we even have this stroke clip mask. So now you can fill things with a clipping mask, which is extremely helpful. And I'll show you how to use that too here in this one. You're going to have a color and then a stamp. So we're going to go and pick a stamp, and we're going to want to choose a cliff. And I think this desert cliff is really nice. And the reason why I like this cliff so much is because it has this nice sense of depth to it, right? But instead, I'm going to go ahead and desaturate it. I want to have this gray feeling because the way that I'm going to, the kind of boss that I'm thinking will be like a vampire goddess that's been imprisoned in this cave. So we're going to have to make this vampire goddess creature, and we're going to make it larger than life. We're going to make it really, really big. But I'm going to desaturate a lot of things because I want this eerie black and white kind of Nosferatu kind of feel to it. I'm not going to have a lot of vibrant colors. I really want this diminished black and white kind of scary environment, and that kind of goes into that kind of feeling of a vampire setting. So we'll go ahead and change it to where the stamp scale is 100. We can change it anytime we want, but let's just create the environment first. So we'll create this nice little U shape, and then we can change the stamp scale. What's really nice is after you've made the line or the stamp or the line or the shape, you'll easily be able to adjust the settings. That's why it's so nice. So I can change these settings, and I can also rotate it, move it around a little bit if I want to. If I feel like it's too much, then I can always do another one because the settings are still there. So maybe it's like, oh, I don't like that shape. Maybe I want to give it a little less bend. It's up to you on how you want to go about doing it. So we'll go with this little bend right here. Go ahead and rotate, move it like this. And then what I'll want to do is fill this with the add mode of the mask tool. And I'll just turn off the mask effects right away. If you don't have a very strong machine, sometimes having the mask effects enabled can be kind of laggy. So to avoid that, just turn off those mask effects right away. And then from here, just fill in this space right here. Okay, and now this is going to be where the combat takes place, is this place right here, right where that green is. And we're going to go ahead and fill that with a texture. So I'll go into the catalog, I'll pick a texture of my choice. I kind of think that one looks fine, and I'll desaturate it as well so that it matches with the cliff color. So I'll just go desaturate, and I'm going to go to fill, but we're going to switch over to the FG layer and then click fill. Now it's a little dark, so we'll have to mess with the settings a little bit. So we'll go in, bring the brightness up. We'll press fill again, maybe just a little bit brighter. You know, could be just a little bit brighter. Fill. There we go. That looks fine. And if you really don't feel like it's the right one, you could always just diminish the brightness a little bit on the cliff. So here is the space where combat is going to take place. We'll add some environmental obstacles like a fallen pillar. That way players can crouch and hide behind things to take cover. Let's say the big bad guy shoots a laser attack or blood or whatever it might be. You need a way to avoid those kind of things. So having pillars, rocks, a log, whatever it might be, something that players can use to interact with. Hide behind of. If there's a minion, then they can kick that minion and they'll fall over the pillar. You can jump on the pillar and then do a lunge attack to maximize damage or range from a ranged weapon. So having an environment that you can engage with makes any battle better, to be honest with you. So any kind like that. It's always good to have these kind of things. So that way your combat is not going to be super boring. So now that that's put together, we can start creating some things to interact with. We can start with maybe creating some pillars. And I'm going to create a pillar that's going to be some kind of, it's got a little bit of perspective to it. And I'll show you a little trick on how I kind of make pillars. So if you just type in pillar in the catalog, you'll see that there are some purely what's called orthographic pillars. Orthographic just means there's no perspective of any kind, okay? And I'm going to create a series of pillars, and I'm going to have some of them standing upright. I'm going to have a pillar fallen down too as well. And that's going to be one thing that players can use, they can interact with. So we'll start with the basics. I'm going to turn off that shadow. I'm going to desaturate this. Remember, I'm going for that desaturated feel to it. We're going to create the top of the pillar first. This is going to be the top. I'm going to drop the brightness down. This is going to create this little face right here. And then I'm just going to group this and just call it the cap. Okay, so that's done. Now let's create the pillar part. And so we'll go back to the line shape or the line tool, and then we'll turn off cliff. And in the Eastern pack, there is these really nice Soji walls, and I think these work really, really well for pillars. And I'll show you how I use this. So we're going to go to that pen shape, and we're just going to go ahead and right here, and we're going to create one line. First, we're going to change the scale. We're going to bring it up a little bit. There we go. I think about that size looks good. We're going to turn the caps off, turn the shadow off, and we're going to turn the saturation down. There we go. So step one. Now you'll create a series of these. Copy, paste. One right here, copy, paste. Another one right here, copy, paste. Right here, copy, paste. Copy, paste. Now to create this illusion of depth, you can take the two ends and bring the brightness down quite a bit. Then we'll take that other one right here. We'll bring the brightness down a little bit more. Oopsie, this one right here, I need to bring the brightness down. There we go. Okay. And now that that pillar is put together, we can scale up a little bit. There we go. And let's scale this down so it's not so huge. Copy, paste. And we're going to push it all the way down underneath. Right on top of here. There we go. Now I'm going to select the pillar. Let's go ahead and lock this so I don't accidentally select it anymore. You noticed? And let's push this down even more. I want to get, there we go. Now we can go ahead and select this, create group. As always, when you group something, label it. So pillar. And then we'll create a series of pillars that will go on top here. So we'll put a pillar here, put a pillar here. And what these are is, these are going to, again, act as something that you can kind of interact with. Let's put another one right here. Okay. And I want to leave some open space so that your players can interact. Now that that's done, we can also just drop a pillar and bring it down like it fell over. There's a fallen pillar right there. This is perfect. This is something that your players are going to be able to interact with. They can hide behind, maneuver, whatever it is they want. Okay. So now that those pillars are there, and you notice that I've lined them up with the grid as well, so that way it's very easy. Now, if you're doing gridless movement, that works better. If you're using a VTT, gridless movement, in my opinion, works a lot better than using gridded. But there's nothing wrong with gridded movement either. And what I'll also do is I'll rotate them a little bit to make it look like they're kind of falling over a little bit. That looks good. Let's move this one this way a little bit. Let's actually push it this way. There we go. That looks good. Okay. So now that we have those pillars there, you have something to interact with. Let's go ahead and turn the grid off for now. And we're going to take a look at it and see how it looks. Looks good. Let's go ahead and make the background black. That's perfect. And then now you have this nice environment that you can work with. You can move around. And then that black backdrop. And we're going to create a couple more things for your players to interact with. And then we're going to go ahead and create the boss. So what we'll do is I'll make sure that I filled in with the add mode all in here. So that way it's covered. And let's go ahead and put down a summoning circle. I think that would look good. We're going to put like some kind of decoration on the ground. And let's do a broken one. I think that would look best. Some kind of broken summoning circle. And then we're going to just warp it just a little bit like this. And then we'll go ahead and change the blend mode to saturation. Desaturate it, not the blend mode. We'll desaturate. And we're going to bring the contrast down. Bring the brightness up, and I want it to kind of match a little bit with the ground underneath it. There we go. So now you have this nice design on the ground. That kind of looks nice. It goes well together. And then we'll put some things on top of the pillars because I was kind of thinking that the boss's power kind of comes from these flames, and these flames are like the flame of life that gives this creature power. And so what you'll end up probably having to do is to crash each pillar. And I've already given an insight to your players that you might have to do that with one pillar all the way already fallen over. And so we'll put these interesting flames on top. And the way that the players will do is they'll deal with environmental challenges. We'll put some kind of cave that minions are coming out of. You'll be hacking your way through hordes of minions while trying to get up to the top part to be in range to attack the boss. You'll have to knock over each pillar that contains the flame to the source that's the power source to this monster. And then that way you'll have this way of knowing phases. So when each pillar is destroyed, a new phase of maybe new minions or new environmental challenges or special attacks that the main boss has might change. So this is a way of kind of keeping track of the different stages in the battle. Staged battle maps or stages of a boss make battles more interesting. And you could introduce a different range of attacks or different types of minions, change the difficulty level. Those things kind of make a boss battle more interesting to me. The other thing that I want to put in here is put some rubble. And that way players have rocks maybe that they could throw. Maybe they can run on top of the rubble, kick the rubble down on top of minions that are coming after you. And also it kind of helps with the ruinous atmosphere because I'm thinking of vampire, right? A vampire represents undead. It's corrupted. It's kind of falling apart. So I think some rubble will add to more of the feeling of this environment. So we'll type in rubble. And there's some nice rubble down here like this. And just like before, we're going to turn shadows off and we'll desaturate and then we'll place them right here. And so this is some rock that players will be able to interact with. So we'll put a couple here, put one in the corner right here. And then maybe let's put another one right here, I think should look good. So they have some rubble that they can interact with. That's nice. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and place this here. Okay, that looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and select every single thing here, including the cliff, create group, and I'm going to call it environment or landscape, whichever one you want to call it. It's up to you. Create. Okay. So now that the landscape is there, that's great. And then we can kind of push this down a couple layers. Let's push it down to layer -3. And then that way, I can still put stuff on top and things underneath as necessary. So let's go ahead and quickly make the save to the changes, and then we'll move on to that next bit. Looking forward to making the baddies. This is one of my favorite things. And I'll also, if you want another to see another video on how to put together monsters, we have a monster token video, or at least a couple of them on the channel, our YouTube channel. So if you want a more in-depth video on how to put together monster tokens or big bad guys, definitely after this stream, go check out the channel, look for monster tokens. And it's the same method that I use here to make these big bad guys. So let's go ahead and make the big bad guy. Now with the big bad guy, you know, you can do whatever you want. It could be a squid, a giant squid, whatever it might be, but you have to come up with a reason why the creature that you're making is a static image and not a token. Now, because this is an imprisoned vampire goddess, they're imprisoned and they're huge and they can't move around. Okay, so otherwise, what's the point of making a static image as a boss, right? You could just use a token. So you have to find some kind of logic structure to understand or explain why this isn't a token. Because the players will definitely question that. Like, well, wait a minute, why is there a static background for a bad guy like in a video game instead of a token like in a tabletop game? Not complex. You have to come up with some kind of story or logic that explains why that giant boss is unable to be a token. It's because they're locked up. Maybe they're chained. Maybe they're frozen in time and they can't move. Maybe magic has trapped them there. Whatever it might be. But there needs to be some kind of logic, because I can assure you, your players will question why on earth there's a static monster instead of a monster token. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the monster token put together, or the big beast. So we'll use a face. Remember, this is a vampire goddess. So we'll go ahead and use this face. This works out great. We're going to desaturate it like before. Now we want to decorate the face. We want to add things to it. Now, when putting together a monster token, there's a simple logic to it. And the truth is that when you start putting stamps together, don't look at a stamp what it's specifically designed for, right? For instance, a chimney might not be a chimney. Maybe it's an arm or a leg. If maybe a rock is not a rock, maybe a rock is the body of a golem. So you have to think outside of the box when putting composite pieces like this together. And it's not complex. At first, it may seem confusing because as you're putting together the creature, you'll say, well, those don't work together. Well, the more and more you add, and the more it insinuates what the image is that you're creating, and it steps away from what the individual stamps were designed for. So let's start putting it together, and you'll see what I mean by that. It's not complex. So first, we have a head. Next, we maybe want to create a neck, maybe a bust, shoulder plates, a chest, a headdress, these kind of things like that. So let's go ahead and make some, maybe make a headdress, maybe like a mask or a half mask piece that goes onto their body. So let's go into here and let's go ahead and take some stamps in here. I see some wall stamps in here. These work great. What we'll do is we'll create a headdress. We'll put that on top like that. No shadow. We'll desaturate. This goes right here. That looks fine. Let's go ahead and continue making more of this headdress. Make sure there's no blend mode. There we go. So we'll kind of make a little headpiece. We'll put that there. I think that looks fine. Okay, let's go ahead and add a piece that maybe goes in the center of the forehead. Maybe some kind of ornamentation of some kind. So let's go into Gothic Horror. There should be some nice stuff in here. This one looks nice. Maybe this one right here. Put that maybe right there. I think that looks good. Let's go with that. Let's bring the saturation, bring the contrast down, bring the brightness up. I want to make sure that things kind of match. Okay, but I still think that will look good just right there. That looks fine. Let's keep adding more stuff to the headdress. I see there's some hair there. Let's make a headdress of some kind with their hair up. Okay, let's go. You know, this looks nice right here. I feel like this chair right here might look nice, like a continuation of the hair behind it. So let's go ahead and desaturate it. Let's bring the brightness down a little bit. And I want to line it up to where the hair is. And I think that lines up nicely. So you have this nice headdress right here. And we can add more stuff to that as we go. If you feel that's too big, we can always scale it down a little bit more like this. There we go. So I think that works fine as a headdress. Kind of makes it more intimidating. Let's lock this too so we're not accidentally selecting it. All right. That looks good. Let's make a neck, shoulders, things like that. So let's use one of these. This may seem like, well, this looks weird. This won't work. Trust me. You'd be surprised. So let's go ahead and put this here. Let's put that there. Let's bring the contrast down, brightness down a little bit. It kind of has this feeling of, yeah, I think that kind of looks nice. This kind of looks like a neck, shoulder piece, a plate that goes like there. Okay. When locking is just easy, you just press Alt-L to lock or select the selection, right-click, say lock. Pretty easy stuff. Okay. All right. Now that we've got that, let's make some shoulder plates. I think boulders work really well. You notice that when you look at the human anatomy on a shoulder, there seems to be like a ball where the shoulder is. And so I think that'll work just fine. So let's use that. Let's go ahead and put it right there. Let's go ahead and push it down a layer, turn that shadow off, desaturate, bring the brightness down. Don't want it to be too massive. Copy, paste, put another one right there. Okay, there we go. That looks good. Let's also rotate some stuff as well. So it's not entirely perfectly straight. So we'll rotate some of these items right here to give it a more dynamic feel to it. Let's rotate a little bit this way. That way that looks like there's some kind of motion or action taking place. If the creature is perfectly lined up vertically, that looks weird. But rotating some of the body parts like the shoulders, rotating some of the head, some of the headdress, gives it a feeling of motion. It gives it a more dynamic feel to it. So that's always nice to kind of do that. Yeah, Victorian style vampire. Love that idea. Okay, so now we have that. Let's create maybe like a cravat, which is kind of like a fluffy cut off like scarf, a cravat. And there's it's really hard to find flowy material, but in the Gothic horror, there's a kind of a dress right here on this drowned woman right here. So this works out perfect. We just push that down right there. Let's push these up a layer. Let's push, there we go. Let's just saturate this. And you can see that there's some nice flowing material right here. Let's bring the brightness down, bring the contrast down. Keep bringing the brightness down a little bit more. And that way you kind of have this nice kind of like cravat-like feeling right here. There we go. Let's just go ahead and move it around. Just see what it looks like. That looks good. Let's scale it down just a little bit so that way nothing is blocking it. And then we can start working on some of the details. I'm not going to worry. Let's put some stuff on the shoulders. Let's put some more stuff on the headdress. And then we're not going to worry about hands. We're not going to worry about any other part of the body. We're just going to focus on this part. And the lore that I kind of have it is that this creature is decaying and falling apart. And you can see that one of the pillars has fallen over where the flame is going to be. That's going to determine that it's lost some of its corporeal form. And so destroying each pillar where the flame is will deteriorate some of the creature's corporeal form. Okay? All right, so let's keep adding some more things. Some great details to add are things like light sources, making the eyes scary, adding some blood, adding some spikes to the shoulder pads. All of those things kind of really add to it. So let's go ahead and put some spikes to give it a more intimidating feeling, right? It's a vampire, so let's make it more scary. So we'll go in, we'll desaturate, we'll put down some spikes on the shoulder pads here. I think that will work out fine. We'll bring the brightness up, the contrast down a little bit. We'll have one up in the front, and let's put another one in the back behind it. We'll bring the brightness down, so that way it looks like there's a little bit more dimension to it. Let's just copy and paste that, and then we'll flip them like this. There we go. And then you have this kind of a nice little spikes on the shoulder pads that will give it a little bit more intimidation to it. And then if you want, you can even put some spikes kind of going inward like this if you want. Up to you if you want to add those kind of things. Okay, let's bring the brightness up a little bit. Let's add one more. We'll flip it. Let's use a different spike instead of the same one. There we go. And you know, I'm not really a giant fan of that myself, so we'll just remove those. I think I just like them on the top. That works out just fine. Let's go to light sources. So we type in light. And you know, we're going to go to... Let's go to sci-fi battle maps. And when I think of vampire, I think blood. So let's maybe make some red, glowing, scary eyes. We'll put those lights right on top. That'll give that this nice red glow. You know, it's a vampire, so maybe they should have some spiky teeth. So we can maybe have their fangs being bared. Like this. We'll copy, paste, we'll flip it, put another one on there. And I think they're a little too dark. So let's go ahead and make them a little bit brighter. There we go. Bring the contrast down. Perfect. There you go. There's some spikes there for some teeth because we want that vampire look to it. Let's also add some more stuff to it. So let's add a necklace. I think that should be a good touch. Saturation. And we'll go ahead and place it right here. There we go. Now you have a nice necklace there. I think that kind of adds to it. That looks fine. There we go. Okay, we're almost done with this creature. We're almost done. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and add some blood. Okay, so we'll go over to your lines, free draw, color, choose the color red. I want a darker red instead of a bright red. And then we're going to change the blend mode to overlay. And then let's go ahead and place a path down just to see what it looks like. I do believe the shadow's off. That's good. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and change the stroke size. Let's make it a little bit smaller. There we go. There we go. That's fine. Now we'll go ahead and use the pen. And let's have some blood kind of just rolling down the face. And what I would do is just use the line work to have it go down the contours of the face and the cheek. Like this. Let's go some down here this way, kind of go dribbles down here, maybe some right here, and it kind of pools where the crack is. Push this down here, and then let's have another one kind of going all the way down here and then kind of dripping off. There we go. That looks good. And let's also put some on the teeth as well. Let's go ahead and push this up a layer to make sure that they're on top of the teeth. There we go. Kind of makes sense. It's a vampire. Okay, go back, put a little bit of blood on here. There we go. And if you want, you can kind of put a little bit on the lip too, like, ooh, tasty, delicious. Okay, so a little bit of blood there. All right, that looks good. So I think overall that looks pretty good. We can go in now, and I'm just going to select pretty much all the stamps, and we'll mess with some shadows to give a little bit more depth. I'll show you how I do that. So I'm just going to go up to Selection Tool, turn all to turn it all off, and then select only stamps. I've selected all the stamps. Then I can go in with Shadow, Custom Object Shadow, and we're going to mess with those shadows to make these stamps pop out even more. So we'll do a vertical shadow like this, and this should make sure that there's this nice shadow work kind of underneath, causing the stamps to pop out more. Now that that's done, we can create group, put vampire, relabel, and then we can go ahead and resize it to fit wherever we want to put it. You want to put it over here? Do you want to have some of it coming out of the ground, coming out from like that? Do you want to move it like this? I'm going to put it like this so the pillar kind of overlaps the creature just a little bit. That will create a little bit more depth. So there's your vampire. So that works good. Now that we have that, we can kind of add a little bit more environmental elements like blood, maybe some rubble, some stuff like that, and as well as those flames. So let's type in flame. And I'm going to use the ones from Fantasy Regional HD, but you can use whatever ones you want. Let's also change the color. You can make them whatever color you want. You wanted to make them a more reddish color, green color. Maybe you want them to be purple. It's up to you, whichever one you want to use. So we're going to put one flame on top here. Let's put another one right here and another one right here. Let's go to place this. Let's rotate it. I want it to line up with the same angle as the pillar. There we go. Okay, so like I said before, your players are going to have to destroy a pillar, which will cause the flame to go out and then diminish this boss's power. And like I said before, is we're going to want to throw in some things like more environmental challenges. So we could put down traps. We could also put down maybe some kind of pit that creatures come out of, because again, when you're fighting a static monster like this, you're not going to be able to use it as a token. So the way to resolve that is to throw in environmental challenges, minions, things like that. And that way, it's going to make the battle more interesting, because it's no fun to fight a static image, right? So remember, use environmental challenges, use those things, and that will make this battle way more interesting. And I think I accidentally didn't select the blood as well, I noticed, because I had it set to this. So we have to fix that mistake. Here we go. We'll create group. Should make sure that everything is selected. Is it all selected? The blood too? Perfect. Great. My bad. And we'll scale it back up again. I'm going to rotate it like this so that way it looks like it's kind of rising up from the depth to face your enemies. Okay. All right. Let's go put those flames back. My mistake on that. One there. Here and one here. Let's not do that one. Let's do that one. That's good. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and put down a cave, because I want minions to come out of it. So you could use whatever cave you want, orthographic, top down. You notice that I've already put these pillars, so it feels right to kind of leave it at this kind of maybe kind of regional like stance. So I think that's fine. Remember, it's a boss battle, and boss battles can be different than just your pure orthographic. For me, with boss battles, I try to add something new and different to each one so that players aren't bored to death. I try not to follow the same map style, the same formula every time. So we'll desaturate that, bring the brightness up, bring the contrast down, and now you have this nice cave right here. And what will happen is that minions are going to come out of here into the battlefield to face your players. That's pretty much how this works. So they're going to kind of come out here to face your players and do combat. So that's how I do that. There could also be environmental challenges, like maybe boulders fall down and your players have to dodge these boulders that fall down because maybe it's collapsing. Maybe the cavern, maybe each time you destroy a pillar in a flame, the cavern begins to collapse. and begins to drop things, making it more and more difficult. So it's up to you to have fun, really make the battle interesting, make the environment something that you have to avoid with the dangers, add minions so that way your players aren't just walking up to a bad guy, hacking them to death until they die, right? So that's kind of the trick on running that. All right, so let's go ahead and throw in some, I think some blood would be good. As you would expect, it's a vampire. There's some nice blood in the watercolor battle map style. Okay. Let's go ahead and throw the blood down. Now, when it comes to blood, if you want to show that the blood is fresh, leave it at full opacity. If you want to show that the blood has dried and the elements have kind of made it look just dulled a little bit, made it fade away, then drop the opacity. So it's up to you. This is how you show the difference between recent blood, and that might be important to convey to your players. It might show that recently other players or NPCs died here recently. So it's actually important to know that blood, being recent or not, can be an environmental storyteller that might indicate to your players that, hey, someone died here recently, giving the sense of alert and danger, heightening that sense of tension, knowing that, hey, ooh, you're facing something dangerous because it's just killed recently. So it kind of gives it that sense of danger. So let's go ahead and throw in a couple more blood pieces. We can throw some over here. Let's put some over here. There we go. You got some blood there. Let's put some on the pillars too. I think that might make it a little more interesting. Throw in some blood on the pillar. And if you want to, you could even throw some blood on the creature as well, just to kind of give it an extra sense of, ooh. There we go. Some blood on the creature. I think that works out well. Okay, so that works out good. Let's go ahead and create a background, a backdrop that's going to help to make it look more like it's a cave. Maybe some stalactites, stalagmites, those kind of things. So let's just save first. Let's go ahead and just look up the stalactites. Here, there should be some right here. These will work out just fine. I'm going to desaturate them, bring the brightness down, and we're going to place them, flip them upside down. And these work great to look like little pieces. I forgot it was stalactites or stalagmites. I always forget. Somebody in the chat will probably correct me, and thank goodness. But we'll throw these in here. This will kind of give it a little bit more of a cavernous-like feel to it. And I want to make sure that they're behind the creature itself. So I'll push this up a layer, and that way these are behind. So let's push this up another layer, push this one down. There we go. That looks good. And let's make these a little bit darker. Bring the brightness down. There we go. That looks good. And then we still want to add some kind of, I don't know, some kind of eerie background that kind of looks interesting. And I like that color purple that we have for the flames. So why don't we continue with that concept of like these kind of purplish colors. So if we go into Fantasy Battle Maps in Hell, there's this really nice kind of wiggly like texture right here. This works great. Why don't we change the color to a purple color, just like the flames, and then we'll bring the brightness down because I don't want it to be too bright. And then we'll bring the brightness, we'll bring the opacity down, and then we'll apply this texture like this into these sections right here where there's negative space. There we go. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a step back and see how it looks. We might even want to curve some of these a little bit, so where they're kind of curving inward. I think that might give it a little bit more flavor to it. There we go. And then if you want to, it's up to you. You can also put some pillars in the very front as silhouettes. And that's completely up to you. None of this is necessary because, again, this does kind of take up some space of the battle map. So that's why I kind of put these kind of things in the corner like this so it doesn't take up too much space. But it just adds to the overall artistic feel of it. It's up to you. Okay, so now that we kind of have that put together, the next step is to add filters. So let's go ahead and throw down our first filter. There's a couple things. There's already this nice corrupted essence. It adds a green-like tint to it. Green and purple are kind of complementary colors. They go well together. So green works well. We can throw that in there. If you feel it's too much heavy green, you can change the opacity of it. And maybe you want to add some purple as well. You could add cold warm to it as well, because it already has some purples that should help bring out the purple without diminishing some of the green there. And so these kind of really bring that piece together. And so let's kind of go over, I'm going to save real quick, and let's kind of go over how I would run this so that you can kind of see for yourselves how I operate this. Again, I'm not going to use any particular tabletop system. That's up to you. So I'm speaking very much in generalizations, but let me pull up a path and let me kind of show you how I would start the combat of this. Your players would likely start right here. Okay, and the map would be zoomed in like this so that the players cannot see the boss above, right? Let's go ahead and change that blend mode too, so it's just normal so you can see better. And then as your players walk upward, they first see the blood and the fallen pillar, and then as they go up further and further up, it begins to introduce the boss. So that's a great way of kind of introducing tension and something scary for the players to interact with. Go ahead and push this down one more layer because I noticed that the pillar is up top, so that looks fine. There we go. And right about here looks good, I think, because this way you can kind of go up and then make sure that your players can see the full boss. Now, when they first encounter this, what I happen is, you can do some theater of mind. You can have a conversation with the monster. How dare you trespass here? And a just low, ominous, evil-like voice, whatever voices you like to use for a bad guy, and then kind of explain, and then they can maybe give away some things like, hey, my body may be corrupting and falling apart, but I'm still more than a match for your party. And then from there, the first phase is trying to avoid minions that will come out of here, because for me, the way that I do stages is the first stage is the easiest in a boss battle. As the stages progress to stage 2 or 3 or whatever it might be, the difficulty level begins to go up. So the easy thing is just kind of deal with these maybe one-shot like minions, and it's up to you. If you want to do like a horde kind of thing where there's a bunch of minions, they all get taken down by one strike, that can kind of give that bloodlust for your players to kind of feel like they're hacking through a horde of one-shot like bad guys. Or you can just bring in maybe just 2 bad guys with a much higher HP set, more robust skill set, making it more challenging. I usually start with the first minions being one-shot easy ones, so bring out 3 or 4, kind of get the flow of battle. That's usually what I'll do. So then those kind of minions will occur. Once players have kind of figured out that destroying a pillar is the way to defeat the enemy, then players will start to make a strategy to start to destroy the pillars. As each pillar falls, let's say this pillar right here gets destroyed, then maybe up the amount of minions or the difficulty of the minions as players are trying to avoid minions and trying to attack the pillars. They're coordinated, and you'll have to figure out which players are most suited for those tasks. So it's really up to you how you want to go about doing that. Once you've kind of gotten to maybe destroying a second pillar, so this one's been destroyed, and then maybe this one's been destroyed, then you can start including some environmental challenges, maybe some boss attacks, like maybe the boss shoots like a laser beam or something from their mouth, and players have to avoid it by hiding behind this pillar right here, or hiding behind the remaining pillars, whatever it might be, right? So that's kind of the way that I go about that. Once they get to that last stage, the combat gets more and more difficult. Maybe some boulders start falling to the ground, and players have to avoid the falling apart collapse as it starts to fall over. And so players are dodging that while also fighting some minions. Make them easier if you're going to have a lot of environmental challenges, especially hard ones, like if a boulder falls on your player, that could immediately kill them. So maybe diminish the amount of minions, focus more on coordinating your attacks, on coordinating and attacking the minions, avoiding that, and then destroying that last pillar. And then the big baddie can be destroyed. So really, these are the ways that I go about doing these big boss battles. Again, because half the battle map is not functional because there's a boss right here, that's why you need to add in all those environmental challenges, and those minions, and then something that your players can interact with, okay? So that's really the trick that I kind of use for dealing these kind of boss battles. And when I do boss battles, they're not all like this. Sometimes I'll just do a purely orthographic battle map with no static image for a boss. It just depends on what you're doing, right? So if you really want this to be an epic boss battle, then maybe go with this. If you're not worried about it, if it's maybe just a kind of a low level boss, then you don't have to go with the extra mile and making a battle like this. So it's up to you. Again, I only use these types of maps for very, very important integral boss battles where they play a huge role in the storyline, in the campaign that I've worked on. Otherwise, I just go with pure orthographic because most players, again, and I've heard this in the chat, I've heard this in on our Discord, sometimes players just do not like a static image. Totally understandable. Again, the way to fix that is to implement a lot more to the combat than just the hack and slash. That's how you resolve that. All right, well, I think we are done for the day, but you get the general concept. It's to split it up into 3 sections so that way you can build up tension moving from the bottom to the top of the map. You'll make the environment first. Make sure that there's things for your players to interact with in the environment. That's on any battle map, not just big boss battle maps. What makes a good battle map, a good encounter, is having things to environmentally interact with. It's really boring when it's just a flat ground and your players are just hacking at an enemy, taking turns, hacking back and forth. Super boring. Make the environment interactable. Once you've created the environment, then start putting that big boss together. Remember that if you don't know how to put together these kind of creatures, there is a monster token stream on our YouTube channel. Watch that. That will kind of go more into depth on how to make these kind of things. If you like this map, I can definitely make it clonable. There already is another one, another map that's on my profile. That's Maddie on that profile. You can go ahead and clone that one. If you like this one better than the original one that was in the thumbnail, I'll also make that available as well. It's just up to you which one you like better. But then once you've kind of finished that last part, you finish the boss, then you want to put in the backdrop behind the boss, and then the last bit, the details and stuff. So super easy to put these together. They're not complex. They're easy to make. It's just that you have to be creative. Think outside of the box when you're putting together a monster. Okay? All right, everyone. That is it. Thank you so much. Remember, there's only one stream next month. I'm on vacation. Don't worry. We're going to be putting shorter clips on the Wednesdays that I'm gone, so to make sure that we have some still going content. Don't forget to join our Discord. If you have questions on how to put these kind of things together, you can always ping me in our Discord. I'm always glad to help. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe and healthy, and merry map making, everyone. Thank you so much. I will see you later. Bye, everyone.